Some people don't hate you because you hurt them. They hate you because you survived everything they hoped would destroy you. My dear chosen ones, lean in and listen closely. There is a reason your existence has become a silent earthquake to the ones who once underestimated you. There is a reason the same people who used to laugh at you with their full chest are now acting like they saw a ghost wearing your face. And make no mistake, it's not because you became loud, dramatic, or hungry for validation. It's because you became powerful, quietly, steadily, and undeniably. Your transformation didn't need a spotlight. It created its own weather. You were never here to blend in. You were never designed to be ordinary. You were never meant to beg, chase, perform, shrink, or apologize for standing out. You are what happens when survival becomes strategy and strategy becomes identity. You evolved, not loudly, not publicly, but internally, mentally, emotionally, energetically, and nothing terrifies an enemy faster than a person who upgrades without announcing the software update. Chosen ones understand this clearly. You didn't become dangerous because you learned how to fight like them. You became dangerous because you stopped needing to. You became the calm storm, the silent weapon, the untouchable psyche, the kind of person whose mere presence feels like a warning label. You didn't roar like a lion, you walked like one big difference. Have you ever wondered why people who once swore they didn't care about you suddenly act like they can't breathe around you? Why conversations die when you enter the room? Why their eyes can't hold yours anymore? Why people you never argued with started avoiding you like you committed a crime they can't describe? You're not imagining it. You're not overthinking. They felt you before they saw you. Energy speaks a language words can't imitate. You didn't have to prove anything, expose anything, clap back, or take revenge. Your growth became the evidence. Your evolution became the receipt. Their fear became the testimony. Before we move forward, chosen ones, take a moment to fuel this mission. If this message is already resonating with that powerful, evolving version of you, show your support by tapping the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your engagement isn't just a click. It tells us that our effort, our energy, and our commitment to bringing you raw, transformative, empowering content is truly making impact. Every like, every comment, and every subscription motivates us to keep creating life-changing messages that match your growth and potential. Stand with us, grow with us, and let's elevate together. This is only the beginning. My chosen ones, hear this. When a person stops being who they once were, it disrupts every person who benefited from their old identity. People loved the version of you that didn't know their worth. They loved the version that tolerated disrespect, disguised as jokes. They loved the version that tried to fix everyone while quietly bleeding. They loved the version that didn't say no, didn't set boundaries, didn't walk away, didn't see through motives. But you changed, and not politely. You're not a chapter anymore. You're a plot twist. You're not an option anymore. You're a realization. You're not quiet anymore. You're unreachable. Chosen ones, you became dangerous the day you stopped trying to prove your value and simply embodied it. The day you realized healing is not weakness, silence is not surrender, walking away is not losing, and minding your business is not softness, it's strategy. You learned that peace is power, privacy is armor, and self-respect is the highest currency. The funny part, you didn't even change for them. You changed for yourself. While they wasted energy trying to be seen, you invested energy trying to become. While they measured life by applause, you measured it by alignment. While they posted, you practiced. While they performed, you improved. While they competed, you evolved. And evolution is the one thing they cannot copy. You are no longer living in rooms that can't breathe at your frequency. That's why they scattered. That's why they whispered. That's why they panicked. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally became who you were always meant to be. So, chosen ones, as we step deeper into this message, remember this truth. You were never too much. They simply remained too small. And when growth meets stagnation, the relationship expires, not with a bang, but with an undeniable shift in energy that everyone can feel, but only a few can explain. Now buckle up. What you're about to hear next will make everything click into place. Before we go any deeper, chosen ones, pause and acknowledge the power you're stepping into right now. If this message is already echoing in your mind and matching the silent evolution you've lived through, show it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and comment 999 so we know you're part of the unstoppable tribe. Your support isn't just appreciation, it's proof that voices like yours deserve content that speaks to a different level of awareness. And if you feel called, use super thanks to help us keep delivering messages others are afraid to speak out loud. Now buckle up. This next part will expose why they're really running. Number 1. The power of a self-made identity that doesn't need applause. A self-made identity that doesn't need an audience. They didn't fear losing you. They feared the day you'd realize you never needed them in the first place. My dear chosen ones, let this sink deep into your bones. Nothing strikes fear into the hearts of your doubters, haters, and former manipulators more than the realization that you discovered who you are without their approval, applause, or attention. They didn't expect you to blossom in silence. They assumed you needed noise, praise, a cheering squad, and a spotlight. They thought you required witnesses to confirm your worth, like a product waiting for a rating. But you did something far more terrifying. You built your identity where no one could see, interfere, or claim credit. While others depended on claps, compliments, followers, and external hype to feel valued, you were constructing yourself in hidden seasons where it was just you, your inner voice, your bruises, your lessons, and your unwavering decision to rise anyway. That kind of identity, my chosen ones, is not manufactured. It is forged. And that is why it scares them. People are not intimidated by loud confidence. They are intimidated by confidence that doesn't need to be announced. They don't fear someone who claims power. They fear someone who became power. You learned to validate yourself without a panel, a circle, a mentor, or an audience. You learned to clap for yourself when no one else would. You learned to stay focused even when no one believed you were going anywhere. You learned to stand tall while they waited for you to break. And the moment you realized you didn't need permission to exist boldly, you became everything they hoped you wouldn't. Chosen ones, let's address the question that silently haunts many of you. Why do people distance themselves when I start knowing my worth? Because when validation is self-sourced, you can no longer be controlled through silence, indifference, or absence. People who once believed they could shrink your confidence by withholding approval suddenly discovered it no longer worked. When a person can't manipulate your emotions, they run. Not because you changed, but because their strategy expired. You became unpredictable, not because you don't know who you are, but because you no longer bend to fit the expectations of others. They can no longer read you, bait you, or shake you through disapproval. Your confidence doesn't rise when they applaud, and it doesn't crash when they ignore you. You are fueled by self-worth, not social oxygen. And here's what truly unsettles them. Identity born from applause can be stolen the moment silence falls, but identity born from solitude becomes unbreakable. You didn't gain this strength overnight. You earned it through days when you questioned everything, nights when you carried weight alone, and moments when you nearly gave up but refused to let defeat finalize your story. That's not arrogance. That is survival evolving into mastery. Chosen ones, let's be clear. You didn't become dangerous because you grew. You became dangerous because you outgrew people who expected you to stay dependent. They wanted you to need them, to seek validation, to chase acknowledgement. They wanted you to rely on their approval as oxygen so they could cut the supply whenever you dared to stand taller, but you built lungs that no longer need their air. Think about the tables people once bragged about inviting you to. You no longer wanted a seat there, not because you weren't worthy, but because you finally recognized you could build your own table, in your own room, on your own ground, with your own rules. That kind of independence is rare, and rare things are feared, not understood. And now the narrative has flipped. They whisper that you've changed, that you've become distant, confident, unbothered. But you and I know the truth. You simply reclaimed what was yours all along. Your identity, your voice, your value, your direction, your standard. My dear chosen ones, remember this. The world respects those who do not beg for labels. The world notices those who didn't ask to be seen, yet became impossible to ignore. You were not shaped by popularity, you were shaped by perseverance. And anyone built in silence dominates in seasons of noise. They didn't run because you became loud. They ran because you became undeniable, and that is only the beginning. When you're ready, chosen one, we go even deeper. Number 2, the moment you stop playing their emotional chess, the game ends. When you stop playing the game, the players lose their power. The moment you stop reacting, their power supply cuts off. Silence can be the loudest revenge ever created. My dear chosen ones, let's step into one of the most threatening transformations you've ever made. And trust me, it's one your haters never expected. They didn't fear your voice. They feared the day your voice no longer needed their conflict to speak. They didn't fear your emotions. They feared the day your emotions no longer belonged to them. They didn't fear your reactions. They feared the day your reactions turned into non-participation. That day changed everything. Because when a chosen one stops engaging in psychological warfare, the battlefield becomes meaningless, and the opponent becomes invisible. Your haters, manipulators, pretenders, and energy hunters didn't lose control because you fought back. They lost control because you stopped showing up to be controlled. For years, they survived off your reactions. They studied you like a pattern, tested you like an experiment, and poked at you like a puppet. Not because they were powerful, but because they needed your emotional response to feel like they mattered. Their entire ecosystem was built on how successfully they could trigger you. Every time you defended yourself, explained yourself, reacted, cried, justified, or tried to prove something, they felt taller, smarter, superior, and relevant. You were not their target. You were their emotional energy source. But then, quietly, without warning, something in you shifted. You didn't announce it. You didn't roll out a speech. You didn't slam doors or make threats. You just stopped playing their game. And when the game ended, it wasn't you who looked lost. It was them. Chosen ones, this is where your true danger lies. You no longer operate on the level where they trained to defeat you. You didn't need revenge to win. You didn't need a show, a scene, or a dramatic exit. You simply walked out of the psychological arena they built, an arena where rules were rigged, results were manipulated, and you were always meant to lose, but they never imagined you would win through withdrawal. You became emotionally unpredictable, and that is the power they cannot decode. When someone cannot read you, they cannot use you. When someone cannot trigger you, they cannot control you. When someone cannot control you, they cannot feel superior anymore. That is why they ran. Some of you may wonder, but I didn't do anything to them. Why can't they face me now? Simple. When manipulation fails, manipulators flee. When accusations don't shake you, accusers panic. When gossip doesn't define you, gossipers choke on their own stories. When emotional traps fail, the trappers become trapped in their own strategy. You turned the entire psychological board upside down without touching a single piece. Their moves became meaningless because there was no opponent left to compete with, and this is what they cannot stand. You won without participating. Chosen ones, let's get even deeper. Your silence was not weakness, it was evolution. Your calm was not surrender, it was elevation. Your detachment was not numbness, it was clarity. When someone stops reacting, it is not because they are empty, it is because they are full of understanding, full of awareness, full of emotional maturity, full of inner foundation they cannot be shaken from. You see, manipulators rely on chaos because chaos gives them roles to play. When you stopped clapping, the performer lost their stage. When you stopped arguing, the liar lost their storyline. When you stopped defending, the accuser lost their weapon. When you stopped explaining, the narcissist lost their audience. Your indifference became their exposure. They are not running because you are aggressive. They are running because you are immune. You cannot be tempted, tricked, provoked, guilt-tripped, or lured back into the old version of yourself. That's why they avoid you now. Not because they are scared of what you might do, but because they are scared of what they cannot do anymore. Chosen ones, your greatest flex will forever be this. You learned how to master your inner world while they were busy trying to invade it. And once a chosen one no longer reacts to external chaos, psychological games lose their power, emotional manipulation dies, and the players disappear, not because they choose to, but because they cannot survive where you've risen. Now breathe, because the next revelation goes even deeper. When you're ready, chosen ones, we continue. Number 3. Seeing behind masks before they even realize they're wearing one. You see behind masks before they even finish putting them on. Some people are terrified of you not because you exposed them, but because you could and chose not to. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about one of your most intimidating strengths. Your vision is not limited to what people show. You see what they hide. While most people interact with others based on appearances, compliments, roles, and surface-level charm, you navigate through life with an internal radar that detects motives, energy, and patterns long before someone's words line up with their truth. And that is exactly why people who run on manipulation, performance, or emotional disguise feel threatened by you long before you ever say a word. You are dangerous, not because you fight, but because you know. And knowing is a weapon many never learn to defend themselves against. Chosen ones, understand this. You didn't develop this awareness from textbooks, seminars, quotes, or advice. You learned it through silent heartbreaks, unexpected betrayals, uncomfortable observations, and years of paying attention while others underestimated your intelligence. While they assumed your silence was naivety, it was actually data collection. While they performed kindness with hidden intentions, you watched the rhythm of their behavior, not the melody of their compliments. You noticed the hesitation before they congratulated you, the slight smirk when they heard you struggle, the shift in tone when you succeeded, the subtle distance when you no longer served their needs, and the invisible strings attached to their so-called generosity. These are the things most people ignore, but you, chosen one, never blink. Your power is not loud. It is psychological precision. You don't guess, you analyze. You don't assume, you observe. You don't accuse, you understand. And when someone reveals their truth, it doesn't shock you because you already filed that information away long before they even realized their mask was slipping. This is what makes you an unpredictable opponent. By the time someone thinks they're getting ahead, you're already 10 steps beyond, quietly deciding whether they are a liability or an asset in your story. Chosen ones, let's address the silent question that lives in your mind. Why do people who tried to deceive me get so uncomfortable around me later? Because deep down, they know you saw them. They don't know what you know, how much you caught, or how much you understood. And that mystery eats at them. When someone can't measure how much power you hold, they automatically fear the worst. They think, what if they expose me? What if they tell others? What if they use it against me? But what they don't understand is that your maturity is what protects them from public humiliation, not their cleverness. You don't reveal what you discover because you don't need revenge. You prefer awareness over warfare. You don't confront every lie because you'd rather redirect your energy into growth. You don't need to prove that you're right because reality eventually reveals everything. And that level of emotional discipline is terrifying to those who rely on chaos, confusion, and manipulation as their advantage. You became dangerous the moment you realized not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, reactions, or emotions. You learned that silence is protection, observation is strategy, and distance is closure. While others rely on manipulation tactics like guilt, confusion, deflection, or exaggeration, you mastered the technique of non-reactive truth. When you refuse to react, you remove their power. When you refuse to explain, you remove their narrative. When you refuse to argue, you remove their control. And Chosen One, here's the real plot twist. You don't even have to expose them, they expose themselves. When a manipulator can't manipulate you, they start malfunctioning. Their stories become inconsistent, their behavior becomes scattered, their confidence begins to crumble, and their lies begin to contradict themselves. They panic because without your participation, their performance loses meaning. This is why they escape, avoid you, or create distance. Not because you harmed them, but because your awareness is louder than their excuses. You are the mirror they never asked to look into. You are the truth they spent years hiding from, and your presence alone forces accountability they aren't ready to face. So, walk boldly, Chosen One. Carry that inner knowing with silent pride. The ability to see through people is not a burden. It is your shield. You didn't ask for this gift, but you earned it through survival, intuition, emotional intelligence, and observation. They fear you because you see what others applaud. You read what others overlook. You detect what others deny. And that, Chosen One, makes you one of the most dangerous energies to encounter in this world. Number 4. A silent presence that exposes truth without a single word spoken. Your silent presence becomes the mirror they can't escape. There is a rare kind of power, Chosen One, that doesn't come from speaking, arguing, exposing, or proving, but from existing. And you, whether you realized it or not, became that kind of silent force. Your very presence turned into a mirror people never wanted to look into, yet could never turn away from. You don't have to call anyone out, reveal their wrongdoings, or remind them of how they treated you, because your energy, evolution, and self-respect do it for you without a single word spoken. And that, my dear Chosen One, is the kind of power most people spend their entire life trying to imitate, but never truly achieve. What terrifies them is not that you remember what they did, but that you never needed revenge to rise. You didn't need to expose anyone, embarrass anyone, or clap back while they expected you to be broken. You rebuilt. While they assumed you would be bitter, you became better. While they waited for you to collapse, you evolved into someone unrecognizable, not fragile but fortified. And nothing eats the conscience of the guilty more than seeing the person they tried to damage standing stronger than ever. Chosen Ones, let's speak truth. People can deny facts, but they can't deny energy. They can edit stories, but they can't edit reality. They can lie on your name, but they can't lie to their own inner voice. That is why when you walk into a room, their stomach tightens. They feel exposed without being confronted. They feel guilty without being accused. They feel inferior without you attempting superiority. You are a silent reminder of everything they did wrong. Everything they tried to sabotage, everything they laughed at, and everything they hoped would fail. Yet here you are, evolved, elevated, untouchable. You became a story that doesn't match their script, and that is psychologically unbearable. They expected to stand above you, Instead, they see you standing beyond them, and now every glance you make, every calm breath you take, every grounded move you make becomes a reflection of who you are versus who they still are. You didn't stay behind to prove a point. They stayed behind because they couldn't become one. Chosen ones, understand this clearly. People who mistreat others assume their actions will permanently shape your identity. They believed you would stay insecure so they could feel secure. They believed you would stay small so they could appear big. They believed you would carry the wounds so they could avoid accountability. But when you healed, you shattered their entire psychological safety, because now they are left alone with the truth. The problem was never you, it was them. And that is why they avoid you now. It's not fear of you, it's fear of themselves when you are near. Because your healed presence reminds them of their unhealed choices. Your maturity reveals the immaturity behind their behavior. Your growth highlights the laziness of their evolution. Your emotional clarity makes their chaos look childish, messy, and unnecessary. They cannot hide behind sarcasm, gossip, or blame anymore, because you no longer feed those energies. You walked away, not to run, but to grow. And they stayed behind, not to reflect, but to deny. And chosen ones, here is the hardest truth. You didn't win by defeating them, you won by outgrowing the need to. That is what makes you dangerous. You don't need to insult them, unmask them, or punish them. Life, time, and their own conscience do that work quietly. You aren't seeking validation, closure, or justification, because you already know who you are. They, on the other hand, are still trying to figure it out while wrestling with the uncomfortable realization that they misjudged the very person who was meant to rise all along. You expose them without exposing them. You teach without teaching. You win without competing. You threaten without attacking. You speak without speaking. That is not weakness, that is mastery. So to every chosen one listening, never dim, shrink, or silence your truth just to make others comfortable. You were not meant to lower your vibration to match their comfort zone. If your presence exposes their wounds, insecurities, and shortcomings, that is not your burden. It is their wake-up call. And remember this final truth: those who fear your silence were never ready for your voice. Number 5. Elevating quietly until you're out of reach without notice or permission. When you grow beyond them without making an announcement. My dear chosen ones, listen closely, because this part is one of your most silent but most lethal transformations. The world is used to people seeking applause for every inch of progress. Most individuals rush to display improvement like a trophy, posting their new habits, their new money, their new circle, their new mindset, desperately hoping someone will clap, envy, or admire what they are becoming, but not you. You did something far more powerful, far more unsettling, far more unstoppable. You outgrew people without a warning, without a speech, and without a farewell tour. You didn't upgrade for attention, you upgraded for evolution. And nothing terrifies people more than a transformation they never got to witness, but are suddenly forced to face. You didn't change by making loud declarations, emotional exits, or attention-grabbing reinventions. You changed in silence, in your thoughts, in your boundaries, in your standards, in your self-respect. Your growth wasn't public, it was internal, and that makes it unarguable. When growth is flaunted, people debate it. When growth is proven through energy, people feel it, and chosen ones, your enemies felt it long before they understood it. One day you were accessible, familiar, predictable, and the next day something about you no longer matched the frequency they were comfortable feeding on. This wasn't a temporary mood swing or a dramatic "I'm cutting everyone off" phase. This was evolution, the kind of transformation that comes from real self-work, emotional maturity, and brutal self-honesty. You didn't cut anyone off with rage. You simply moved into a higher version of yourself, and they remained where they were. They noticed the distance, not because you made an announcement, but because suddenly they couldn't reach you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or energetically anymore. People thought they had secure access to your life. They assumed the door would always remain open because they were used to the old version of you. The version that tolerated excuses, accepted crumbs, absorbed disrespect, waited for change, and cared too much about who stayed. But the moment you started valuing peace over presence, alignment over history, and self-worth over loyalty to suffering, the door didn't slam. It simply closed quietly and permanently. Chosen ones, that is the kind of exit that hits the hardest. The one without drama, without argument, and without explanation. When you say nothing and simply level up, they are left alone with the truth they've been avoiding. You didn't lose them. They lost access to a version of you that no longer exists. Suddenly, they felt the gap. A gap they couldn't fill with guilt, manipulation, nostalgia, or emotional tricks. You changed your habits, your circle, your mindset, your standards, and they realized too late that they never evolved themselves. It wasn't jealousy in the traditional sense. It was panic. Because deep down, they realized that while they were busy mocking, doubting, gossiping, or delaying, you were quietly mastering yourself. They never believed you would actually grow into someone who no longer needed their validation, attention, or presence to feel whole. This is why they run, not because they hate you, but because they cannot reach you anymore, and nothing threatens small-minded people more than losing influence over someone they thought would always remain accessible. They know you're not returning to old habits, old versions, old patterns, or old relationships. They know you won't shrink yourself to make them comfortable again. And the truth that breaks them the most is this: you finally outgrew the role they needed you to stay in. They wanted you predictable. They wanted you dependent. They wanted you stuck in old cycles. They wanted the version of you that made them feel big. But you became a version that demands evolution. And they were never prepared for that level of requirement. Chosen ones, your growth is not loud. It is not for show. It is not for revenge. It is simply real, and real growth doesn't yell. It reveals you didn't walk away because you were angry. You walked away because you were ready. And now the world sees you operating from a level where explanation is unnecessary, validation is irrelevant, and going backwards is impossible. They don't fear losing you. They fear knowing you'll never need them again. That, chosen ones, is the type of power that makes people run. Number 6. Walking away without explanations. Closure found within, not from them. The power of walking away without permission, proof, or explanation. My dear chosen ones, let this truth settle in your spirit like iron. Nothing shakes people more than realizing they can no longer bait you with unanswered questions, half-truths, emotional breadcrumbs, or dangling closure. While others cling to explanations like oxygen, you learn to breathe on your own. You mastered the rare ability to walk away without demanding clarity, confession, or apology. That alone makes you one of the most dangerous kinds of humans alive. Most people crack if they don't get closure. They spiral, they obsess, they replay scenarios at 3 a.m., trying to decode meaning from silence. But you, chosen one, evolved past that phase. You learned that closure is not something others give you. It is something you decide. Their version of the story no longer defines your healing, because you now understand that the truth is always revealed in behavior, not speeches. You didn't reach this level by accident. There were seasons when you desperately wanted answers, seasons where you begged the universe to tell you why they switched up, why they betrayed, why they lied, why they acted like you were disposable after benefiting from your sincerity. You used to crave an explanation that made it all make sense, but then something powerful happened. You realized that people's actions are already the clearest answers you will ever get. When someone mistreats you, doubts you, disrespects you, ghosts you, manipulates you, or plays both sides with your name, you no longer go searching for the why. You replaced "why did they do this" with "why am I still analyzing someone who already showed me who they are?" That shift is evolution, and evolution is always intimidating to those who expected you to remain emotionally dependent. Chosen ones, manipulators, narcissists, attention addicts, and control-driven personalities rely on one major thing: your need to understand. They thrive when you chase. They count on you asking questions so they can distort, delay, distract, or deceive. They want time, access, and emotional reaction, because reaction equals power. They don't fear confrontation. What they fear is your silence. They don't fear your anger. What they fear is your absence. They don't fear being exposed. What they fear is becoming irrelevant to your inner world. When you stopped chasing closure, you stole the script out of their hands. Without your questions, they had no stage to perform on. Without your curiosity, they lost leverage. Without emotional pursuit, their manipulation strategies expired. The game only works if both players stay seated. You simply stood up and walked away. And that, chosen ones, is the kind of strength no enemy can compete with. People expect rage. They expect begging. They expect emotional breakdowns. They expect you to prove your side, to force understanding, or to seek validation. But when you respond with detached clarity, it hits harder than any argument, any insult, or any revenge could. You didn't win by fighting. You won by removing access. Understand this. Walking away is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Distance is not avoidance. It is emotional mastery. It is proof that you trust your perception more than their explanation. Once someone's behavior becomes inconsistent, disrespectful, exploitative, dismissive, or deceptive, you don't look for closure. You create it. You observe patterns, connect dots, and act accordingly. While others cling to potential, you rely on patterns. While others make excuses for people, you read the truth in repetition. That clarity is what makes you dangerous, because clarity leads to action instead of emotional captivity. People never expect you to detach. They think their mixed signals will keep you on standby. They assume confusion will freeze you. They assume you will wait forever because you once cared deeply. But love without boundaries is self-destruction. And the chosen ones learned that lesson the hardest way. The moment you stopped giving unlimited chances, their confidence in controlling you shattered. You became unreadable. You became unpredictable. You became unmanipulable. And unpredictability is the final stage of power. Chosen ones, what terrifies them most is that you didn't need revenge to heal. You didn't need an apology to move. You didn't need an explanation to understand. You simply walked forward and never looked back. They expected you to wait for emotional permission. Instead, you reclaimed emotional authority, and now they're running, not because you hurt them, but because they can no longer influence your reality. They lost a level of control they thought was permanent. Your closure is this. You saw the truth, you accepted it, and you decided your peace mattered more than their presence. That, chosen ones, is danger, and that is why they run. Number 7. Refusing to carry what was never yours and returning every hidden weight. When you stop carrying what isn't yours, their mask starts to slip. My dear chosen ones, let's speak the truth that many never dare to acknowledge. Not everyone walks away from you because you changed. Some walk away because you finally stopped carrying the emotional trash bags they dumped onto you and dared to hand them back to their rightful owner. There was a point in your life where you unknowingly became the default therapist, emotional landfill, and silent fixer for people who never intended to fix themselves. They saw your empathy as free storage. They saw your kindness as unlimited emotional credit. They saw your patience as weakness, not as a rare form of emotional intelligence. And because your heart was sincere, you didn't question why the weight kept getting heavier. You simply adjusted your spine, tightened your grip, and tried harder to keep everyone else afloat while your own energy slowly drowned beneath the surface. You didn't choose that role, they assigned it to you. You became the person who absorbed the storms others refused to face, not because you were obligated, but because you believed helping them would create peace, harmony, and mutual understanding. You believed that carrying their hidden pain was a silent way of showing loyalty and love. You believed that cushioning their mistakes would protect the bond. But chosen one, there is a thin line between compassion and self-destruction. You crossed it not out of foolishness, but out of heart, and they exploited that. The irony is that while you were breaking under invisible weight, they walked freely, laughing, living and functioning without acknowledging the damage their unprocessed emotions were causing. They let you feel guilt for what they caused. They let you feel shame for what they projected. They let you feel responsible for problems that existed long before you entered their lives. And what did they give back in return? Silence, defensiveness, excuses, or blame. They grew comfortable watching you apologize for things you didn't do, fix wounds you didn't cause, and justify behavior that wasn't yours to repair. They treated your emotional labor like a service they were entitled to, until the day you realized you were never meant to be their psychological storage unit. Chosen ones, the moment you stopped absorbing what wasn't yours, everything shifted. You didn't become cold, you became aware. You didn't become selfish, you became balanced. You didn't become distant, you became protected. You didn't cut them off, you simply returned emotional ownership. And that, right there, is what caused the panic. People who rely on you to carry their emotional mess will always call you different once you stop being their unpaid emotional janitor. When they realized their guilt, insecurity, bitterness, manipulation, and unresolved trauma could no longer hide behind your patience, they had to face a mirror they never wanted to look into. And my dear chosen ones, that mirror terrifies them more than losing you. When you were emotionally available to absorb everything, they never had to evolve. But the moment you stepped back, they were forced to confront the truth they avoided for years, that their wounds are their responsibility. This is why they ran, not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped carrying. They preferred the version of you that accepted blame to avoid arguments, apologized first to restore peace, overfunctioned to compensate for their lack of effort, and absorbed chaos to keep the connection alive. They didn't want a healer, they wanted a shield. They didn't want accountability, they wanted a substitute. They didn't want growth, they wanted comfort. But chosen ones, you were never born to be someone's emotional furniture. Your boundaries, honesty, and self-respect became a threat, not because they were aggressive, but because they revealed truth. When you finally said, "That's not mine to hold anymore," they saw their own insecurities fall to the floor with no one left to catch them. That silence you created, it spoke louder than every conversation you avoided for years. To them, it sounded like exposure. To you, it felt like liberation. And now you understand why they kept their distance. Not because you became unlovable, but because being around you now requires emotional maturity, accountability, self-awareness, and ownership. Not everyone is willing to do that work. Some would rather lose you than face themselves. So remember, chosen ones, you are not a therapist. You are not a dumping ground. You are not responsible for emotional debts you didn't create. You have the right to hand back every weight that was never designed for your shoulders. And anyone who runs once you do was never a loss, only a revelation. Number 8, turning every hit, lie, and betrayal into advanced personal weaponry. The art of turning every attack into advanced self-mastery. My dear chosen ones, listen closely. This part right here explains why so many people can't sleep peacefully when they think about you. They didn't just underestimate you, they forged you. They didn't just attack you, they upgraded you. Every wound became wisdom, every insult became intelligence, and every betrayal became building material. They thought they were throwing stones to break you, but you quietly collected every stone and built an entire fortress that now keeps them far, far away. Never underestimate the person who turned their scars into strategy. They become unstoppable without ever needing revenge. Chosen ones. The most dangerous version of a human being is the one who learns in the dark what others only learn in safety. They tried to hurt you because they wanted to see you fall apart, not realizing that your resilience was activated the moment the first hit landed. They assumed pain would make you desperate, bitter, or desperate for validation. Instead, it turned you into someone who sees, senses, understands, and anticipates everything long before it's spoken. You didn't just survive, you evolved with precision. You became someone who doesn't just read lips. You read energy, silence, patterns, and intentions. While they were laughing behind your back, thinking they succeeded in damaging your confidence, you were learning how to live without their approval. While they were gossiping and trying to stain your image, you were mastering emotional self-discipline and learning to recognize the difference between sincerity and performance. While they hoped rejection would make you question your worth, you learned how to validate yourself internally so no one ever gets to hold that power again. Every act of betrayal became research. Every disappointment became data. They were attacking emotionally, never realizing they were training a strategist. Chosen ones, not everyone grows through comfort. Some are born through chaos. Your awareness didn't come from books, motivational quotes, or friendly encouragement. It came from being lied to by people you trusted, used by people you supported, and underestimated by people who benefited from your kindness. You didn't grow because life was easy. You grew because you made a decision every single day to not let pain turn into poison. And now look at you. You can sense hypocrisy in a handshake, detect jealousy in a compliment, feel manipulation in disguised kindness, and recognize betrayal long before it fully unfolds. They don't understand how your intuition became so sharp, but it was sharpened by every moment they expected you to break. Instead of collapsing, you adapted. Instead of reacting, you observed. Instead of begging, you detached. Instead of drowning, you learned how to breathe underwater. Chosen ones, let me address the question that sometimes crosses your mind. Why did they do it? Why did I have to go through all that pain? Because life knew something they didn't. You were not meant for average existence. Warriors are not built in celebrations. They are built in battles. Leaders are not shaped by compliments. They are shaped by challenges. People with real power are not born from praise, but from pressure. You didn't grow around the pain. You grew through it. And that is the difference between you and the ones who attacked. And now, the irony. They created exactly what they hoped would never exist. A version of you that is alert but not paranoid, calm but not naive, kind but not blind, silent but not weak. They didn't just fail to destroy you. They accidentally made you someone they can never play with again. You are the after effect they never calculated. Chosen ones, understand this. Your greatest weapon is not revenge, exposure, or confrontation. It is transformation. When someone tries to break you and you come back stronger, wiser, quieter, and harder to access, that alone becomes the most painful consequence for them. They didn't expect you to learn, and they definitely didn't expect you to remember everything you turned harm into homework, setbacks into strategy, heartbreak into higher standards, and silence into self-control. So don't ever regret what shaped you. Every attack trained you. Every betrayal certified you. Every disappointment qualified you. They didn't create damage. They created the evolution they're now running from. And the most terrifying part for them is knowing they can never undo what they accidentally built. You are no longer just surviving, you are untouchable, and they know it. Number 9. winning not through battle, but through relentless, unshakable endurance. You don't battle their chaos, you outlive their entire playbook. My dear chosen ones, listen closely, because this right here is one of the sharpest, most silent traits that makes you dangerously untouchable. You don't waste time fighting people, you outlast their strategies. While they throw emotional firecrackers hoping for an explosion, you move with the calm precision of someone who knows that storms eventually exhaust themselves. You are not powerful because you are loud, dramatic, confrontational, or impulsive. You are powerful because you refuse to be dragged into wars that were never worthy of your energy. You don't bark, you don't beg, and you don't break. You endure. There are people who thrive only when there is chaos. Their confidence exists only if they can trigger insecurity in others. Their identity is built on reactions, arguments, and emotional manipulation. So what happens when they meet a chosen one, someone whose silence is stronger than their noise, whose clarity is sharper than their traps, whose peace is louder than their accusations? Their entire psychological battlefield collapses. They don't know how to respond to someone who refuses to bleed where they expected wounds. They don't know how to handle someone who won't give them the emotional fuel they crave. And that is where your danger becomes undeniable. Chosen ones, your power is not in how hard you hit. It is in how long you can stand without swinging. You discovered that reacting is not always strength. Sometimes it is surrender. Anyone can shout, argue, expose, revenge, or panic. But only a rare, evolved, mentally disciplined individual can stay focused while being provoked. You mastered the ability to let people think they won simply because you refused to play their childish games. And that reality bothers them more than any insult ever could. Have you noticed how they tried to push your buttons, provoke your emotions, and test your limits just to see if you would explode, defend, or collapse? They wanted you loud so they could call you dramatic. They wanted you defensive so they could call you insecure. They wanted you reactive so they could call you unstable. But you became unreadable, unshaken, unbothered, and that's when fear replaced their arrogance. You didn't fight them. You exposed them by staying still while they destroyed themselves. Let's be honest, chosen ones, some people don't want truth, they want attention. They don't want solutions, they want control. They don't want peace, they want dominance. So the moment you stopped reacting, their script died. Their plot failed. Their role dissolved. Their ego starved. And when someone loses power over a person they once controlled emotionally, mentally, or socially, panic becomes their new personality. People like that are not afraid of confrontation. They are afraid of irrelevance. And the moment your silence stopped feeding their importance, they realized that the only person who truly mattered in that interaction was you. They needed you more than you needed them. They required your frustration, your confusion, your vulnerability, and your reaction to feel victorious. And when they didn't get it, it felt like suffocation. Chosen ones, understand this wisdom. Endurance beats manipulation every single time. Anyone can deceive for a moment. Anyone can pretend for a season, but no lie can outrun time, and no mask can survive consistency. You mastered the art of stepping back and letting truth do what truth always does. Reveal, you became the person who doesn't expose people with accusations. You expose them with patience. You don't ruin their reputation, they ruin it themselves. They expected a battlefield, you gave them a mirror. They expected noise, you gave them silence. They expected collapse, you gave them evolution. Your ability to outlast instead of outburst makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability in psychological warfare is lethal. Those who once believed they understood you realized they never truly did. They studied who you used to be, not who you evolved into, and when they reached for the old version of you and couldn't find it, panic hit like cold water. You were never interested in winning arguments. You were busy winning your future. You weren't fighting for dominance. You were fighting for peace. And that is why you are dangerous. Your purpose is bigger than their plot. You are not here to prove who you are here to become who you are destined to be. Chosen ones, remember this final truth. The strongest warrior isn't the one who strikes the hardest. It's the one who never stops standing. And you, my chosen one, are still standing. That's why they ran. And now, chosen ones, as we close this powerful chapter, let everything you've heard today settle into your mindset like armor you were born to wear. You are not dangerous because you attack. You are dangerous because you evolve, endure, and rise beyond every tactic designed to break you. If this message resonated with your spirit, show it. Like this video, subscribe for more unstoppable truth, and comment 77 if you know you're built for greatness. Others couldn't handle. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded who they are, because real chosen ones don't walk alone. They awaken others.